Nice one.
Sweet. That's a much better clap.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Joshua Bulmer and I'm one of the heads of Sub Alley and the director of the Postman. In all the different scenes of the Postman, I think the most surprising one for me came at the midpoint of the film, where Felix, played by the incredibly talented Nicholas Benjamin, finds himself in court-mandated therapy. Now, what I think the film personally really picks up is once Ethan, played by the wonderful Daniel Grice, enters the picture. We have this beautiful scene where they walk home together after the session, and I think Ethan takes pity on Felix and wants to throw him some form of lifeline, only I don't think Felix is ready to accept that yet.
Look, I didn't come here for your pity. I know, it fucking sucks, because that's my life.
When initially filming the scene, weather conditions were a major issue. We filmed it on day 3, and I ended up just pulling the plug on the whole shoot.
Okay, do you want to go?
Yeah, let's
Should
go.
we stop then?
There was so many things going wrong.
But it's my
Cut. Sorry guys, the battery's done. We've got more batteries here.
Weather conditions,
Look, I didn't come here for your pity, all right?
cars kept pulling up.
Prick that ran over my daughter.
Guys, we're just going to move onto the road for a second.
So sorry about the
No,
lighter.
it's fine, it's fine.
The weather was very dark and gloomy, whereas this scene had to contrast to a lot of the film. Most of the film is dark and gloomy. However, this is a moment of clarity in Felix's life. It needs to be more bright and vibrant.
Until I find them,
And then what? And then what, Nick? You're Nick.
Oh, wait, cut. Should we cut?
Yeah, we'll cut.
Another major issue, to no fault of their own, was the actors. We'd done a rewrite a few days prior, which improved the script massively, however drastically changed it.
it fucking sucks. But that's...
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I know it fucking sucks because that's my life.
It felt very forced and staged and none of the lines were coming naturally.
Or I just want peace in here.
No, that's the happiness line.
Yeah.
They literally,
Yeah, no stress, just holding 2 grand in my hand. No, it's fine.
All I need is judging on my daughter, my little girl.
And you won't be happy until you get.
Okay.
And you won't be happy until you find the person responsible.
Given the limited time for filming, we didn't have a lot of time to rehearse. I think the actors were really struggling with this. I also don't think Dan and Nick at the time really understood how integral this scene was. Without this scene, the torture scene means nothing. We need to show the dynamic between these two characters before we just rush into all the fun gore stuff later. I think it was important to establish their relationship. It makes the torture scene more tragic, showing them kind of bond rather than just oppose each other later. Because without this scene, why should we care about the turn?
Okay, do you want to go?
Yeah, let's
Should
go.
we stop then?
Cue him in.
10 for what? Look, I didn't come here for your pity. I know, it fucking sucks. Because that's my life. When my wife died, there was no one responsible. It was no one's fault. I know, I did everything I possibly could, but this!
Rehearsals went brilliant. We went home and we just worked on it for hours. And I think Dan and Nick really got in touch with their characters during this bit and just questioned all my choices and understand what exactly I was looking for.
I've seen enough people in my line of work to know when someone's lost all sight of where to go from here. You don't believe therapy will work because you've already done it.
Therapy didn't help me last time. It was my daughter that kept me going.
We had the characters change their blocking. Whoever had more control over the conversation would stand closer towards the camera. They start off next to each other. They both think they have the right ideals. They both think their ideology is more important than the other ones. Felix has been hurt so much at this point that he doesn't really have the same optimism that Ethan feels. You have 2 very stubborn people, both set in their ways, both thinking them right. It's almost like a mental battle before later on when it's a physical battle. It's a metaphor for what they're talking about, how they're equal at the start and then they're both fighting for control. Yeah. So both of them is trying to overtake the other one, literally and figuratively. When talking about their wives, Ethan manages to put Felix in a much more vulnerable place. The conversation obviously changes once Ethan questions Felix about the peace symbol. This is where I think Felix gets a lot more defensive and tries to take back control of the conversation.
Look, I didn't come here for your pity. I know, it fucking sucks, because that's my life!
While Felix is expressing his frustration, we see glimmers of the monster he's holding back underneath. However, this time, Ethan doesn't let him go there.
Until I find them,
And then what, Felix? Kill them?
He then squares back up to him,
really
making them, again, level. It's questioning if this is the right way for him to go. And Ethan actually offers him another way out, and another way to get and find what he's looking for, which is peace. We did a number of takes, and honestly I think we got it on about the 3rd or 4th try. Not to mention we were very pressed for time considering this was our last day. Everyone was really happy with the takes we got, and I was being encouraged by the whole cast and crew just to call it a wrap on that scene and just move on to the next final shots we had to do.
Someone ran over my daughter and just drove away! They smashed their car into my life and just drove away!
But when looking at Nick, I remember just knowing that we could do it better. I just remember looking at him and he looked at me and he said, he's got one more take in him. I could just tell, I just knew for whatever reason, I knew we just had to do it one more time. I encouraged Nick the whole shoot that if he felt tears coming on, just to go off script and go with whatever felt natural. I also think it's very important as a director never to direct tears. I hate it when I see in scripts like then he cried or then he teared up, because crying is such a natural thing and it's very hard to get an actor to that point. It needs to feel natural, and if it doesn't feel natural, people are just going to cringe. During the 4th take, we hadn't really seen Nick get to that point yet until...
Can have that peace you're looking for, I promise you. The moment, Felix, that you stop and you take control of it.
You know, we'd already got it. I think it already relieved the pressure and got him to that point where, worst case scenario, if he messes up, we've got the other take, which I think is always the best kind of situation to be in on set. It's once you've got it, do it again, because you've got nothing left to lose. Not to mention Dan played off it really well. When an actor goes off script, you run the risk of the person he's acting against to not really go with the grain, but that's what great actors do. They just go with the scenario, they never break character, and I think Dan handled it brilliantly. Not to mention, I just love the character of Ethan. It was definitely the hardest part to cast. I had Nick instantly in mind when I wrote Felix. However, I didn't have anyone in mind when I wrote Ethan. And Dan literally took it right out of my head and built so much on it.
Judge.
Oh, Jerry.
What about Dan specifically do you like?
He's just got such a soothing voice, doesn't he? I feel safe listening to Dan. I think Dan, he just looks like a therapist as well. He sent me the first picture I got when I casted Dan. We were talking about his costume and I said, do you have a scarf? And he just sent me back a picture of him in the scarf, which I just loved. I don't know why I love scarves so much in my scripts. Like they're gonna keep appearing.
You get more noise from
Cut the check.
Cut the check!
Once we got it, it really felt like we'd made the movie, because that was the last proper take we did. Everything else we did that day was the quick pickup shots of him just going up to the letterboxes at the beginning. It was the last shot of the Postman, really, that we did, and it felt like we'd done it. Due to the delay, we ended up actually filming this scene the morning after the torture scene, which the torture scene was a 20-hour day. So you can imagine everyone just hated me. Like, everyone was completely shattered. It was horrible. Not to mention, the day we had before was a very physical and a lot of screaming. So people's voices were just going. And I was worried we weren't going to get it, to be honest with you, at one point. Going on a more personal note, from someone who struggles a lot with anxiety, the morning after I was done. I was completely burnt out. I was throwing up and I just couldn't focus. I didn't know where I was. And I had to tell my cinematographer, Sam, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can film today at all. And I think it really got to me on that last day when I realised it was so close to the end, and I just thought, oh, what if I buckle it? And I remember just completely breaking down, vomiting, and I just felt like I'd failed the project, and I wasn't going to finish it. It wasn't just a project for them. They knew how much it meant to me, and because it meant so much to me, it meant a lot to them, which I really appreciated. My mum and my best mate and cinematographer Sam, who was stop it, man. They were honestly the most supportive people I could have asked for at this time. It was a very difficult time for me. As soon as they heard I was having one of my episodes, they just didn't even question it. They showed up on set, and with or without me, they were going to finish this film for me. You know, that meant the world to me. Had some more lines I wanted to say about you, about how
Scene 8, shot 2, take 1.
I didn't care what condition I was. I got onto set about an hour late, and they hadn't even started rolling yet, which was brilliant, because I literally came up to set and everything was literally ready, everything was set up, and I just had to call action and start directing.
Scene 2, shot 4, take 2.
You sound terrible.
Oh, and speaking of final takes, of all things to drive past, just to really wrap up the Postman, one car drove past during the last take, and of all cars it could have been, it was actually a Postman. Well, it was a red van, but it was close enough to a Postman.
These are a few of my least favourite references. Hey, that's my thrill! Jam sandwich gone wrong.
Oh no.
Scene 1, shot 19, take 1.
She put up a fight.
Oh.
Enjoying it like a little bit too much.
Because
I am enjoying
this is an actor's dream. I wish more student films were like this. Honestly.